All right, so we're recording now.
All right, great.
Yeah, man, welcome.
Thanks.
I just did a little intro for you, kind of my crossing paths with you over the years,
Uh-huh.
which it's been infrequent, but I
Uh-huh.
think I did a first retreat at Dharma or with ZCO. It was a Rohatsu when they mixed with Dharma Rain. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think was that like one of your first times teaching, like formally in it, it felt like you were newer, sort of. I heard you ask a question to a teacher, sort of like, what do I do with being a teacher now?
Oh, so I don't remember when that was, but
Yeah, that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah.
I might have
Yeah.
better memory of it than you do.
Yeah, we started teaching with them, and I mean, we've done retreats with them as since early 2000s. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was when they were switching out their buildings and kind of
Oh,
needed
okay.
a
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been a priest for now?
I ordained in 2006.
2006. Were you a resident before that for a bit?
I started residency in 2003.
Okay. Yeah. And have you been at it the whole time?
Well, I'm now living in Portland and have been for about a year.
Yeah. Are you
So
doing part-time? I think is what I heard you mention.
I was doing part-time and now I'm full-time in the city.
Okay. So you're
Uh,
out of the monastery.
yeah, I am still a ZCO teacher and still ordained, but I'm not a monastic anymore.
How is that transition?
Well, I mean, what led up to the transition was going through a lot of discernment and midlife crisis, and
Yeah.
that's a whole podcast. But
Well, yeah. I mean, I am curious about this because, like, part of the thing I'm uh, interested in is uh, how to hold the sort of, they seem like different places, almost like a monastic setting or a retreat setting, and
uh
kind of our everyday life, and that sort of balance of holding those, like, sort of
yeah,
contemplative heart and how it might look different in everyday life than at a monastery, or
yeah.
like I was just kind of curious if you're kind of maybe in that a little bit of
Yeah.
like
So the question is what's different or how is it for me?
yeah, how has it been for you, and what have you noticed sort of in the transition, like what surprised you or what sort of caught you, if that is enough of a frame of a question.
Yeah. Well, what surprised me was how much fun I had, coming back into the city.
Yeah.
Before COVID, when Portland was just popping like it normally does, I was involved in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I was making a movie with my theater teacher. I was doing this practice on the side with him. I was getting involved with dance. I was starting to DJ more. I was dating. I was jamming with people on the drums, and I was teaching. So for me, leaving the monastery was, I felt like I completed a cycle of my training and my work.
Yeah.
So I spent 15 years there,
Yeah.
and I don't feel like I depend on that structure to practice like I once felt like I needed it. So
Yeah.
in some sense, it's been internalized,
Yeah.
and the Dharma, or just carrying the practice, has become second nature.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun mostly.
Yeah.
The reality of making a living now is upon me. That's one
Yeah.
thing, we worked hard at the monastery. I mean, we worked basically as a teacher there, and when I was the assistant abbot, I was on from 4:30 in the morning till 10 at night, with maybe an hour break in there. So it was a really rigorous life. So in a way, like, lay life is easy, especially COVID lay life, because I'm just working remotely. And
Yeah.
so I think the training, I can't speak for other monasteries, but the training in a Zen monastery is excellent preparation for throwing oneself into a complicated life 100%.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, you move from stillness to activity, from retreat to full on engagement so often. It's a
Yeah.
rhythm that's daily and a rhythm that's monthly.
Yeah.
So I think it is unique in the way it really is an integrated practice.
Yeah.
You're not cloistered and removed. You're not free of responsibility, like some monastic forms. People really don't work and they just sit around and read scriptures all day.
Mm-hmm.
That's not great vow training, at least, and I think that's not Zen training.
No, I mean, I've been through a few different places, always visiting as sort of on retreat, but
Yeah,
yeah. But it seems within the Zen container, the schedule though is this sort of
schedule.
thing that really holds things together. I
Yeah,
heard I can't remember his name right now, but he would go to Upaya and he's like a Tibetan teacher. He's American, but a Tibetan teacher. And he talks about the schedule, especially on retreat, being so intense that it allows you to fall apart and still be held.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
curious as you sort of left into kind of lay life, like managing your own schedule and like if you've noticed any adjustment there. So I always kind of appreciate retreat where it's like, oh, every choice is made and I can
right.
just go with it. But then when I have to think of the choice and then follow through with it, it sort of tweaks things
Yeah,
for me.
yeah,
So
yeah. So your listeners might not know what the schedule is like. I
it's
mean,
fine.
like
I do a little thing if there's things I don't think people know, I
go
add it in
for
the
it.
beginning
Oh, okay,
so
great.
we can
Okay.
just talk kind of freely,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I first came, I was busier than before, because I'd have dance classes and I would have a date and I would have tea with a friend and I'd have meetings with
Yeah.
students and then I'd be over at the temple across the street. So my life was still really scheduled. But then COVID happened,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple months after that I moved into Portland and it was just wide open time because Heart of
Yeah.
Wisdom is closed. So finding structure for me, there was this fear of how am I going to get a livelihood together.
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of motivation to use my time fairly well
Yeah.
for that reason because I don't want to work at new seasons. I want to be a spiritual teacher and somehow be supported.
Yeah.
So, yeah, actually it's not been hard to have all the space. My I I've had a lot of juice for getting my new life going. I could put it that way. I'm really inspired to design my life in a new way that integrates all of who I am.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been hard to use time too well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I
sure,
appreciate
sure.
it. I.
Let me see. There's got to be. I want to see if I can get more honest. Some challenges.
Well, I kind of go to challenge. I'm like a psychotherapist,
Yeah.
I get pulled there. So when you didn't
Uh-huh.
go there, I'm like, oh, that's great. Like it doesn't need to always be
Okay.
hard,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was like at the monastery, I didn't sleep for more than 6 hours for so long. Like maybe
Yeah.
once in a while I'd sleep 8 hours, but there's such an intensity in that life that if I slept 8 hours, I kind of felt like I wasted part of my day.
Yeah.
But now I sleep in and I have the evenings free. I'm not always meditating, and
Yeah.
I would say my biggest challenge, like everybody, is not spending too much time on Instagram or whatever the poison is.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever the thing that's grabbing attention to
Yeah,
make a profit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this kind of thematically connects to one of the reasons I wanted to connect with you. I'm doing this project. I don't quite know what it is. It's evolving as I engage with it. But I'm going on a surf retreat almost, like a surf trip that I'm trying to bring a little bit of a kind of intensive practice period to, but shaping it around a surf trip.
Uh-huh.
So like the surfing will dictate the practice periods, like
Yeah, yeah.
sitting before or whatever it is. I kind of don't know yet exactly the flavor it'll take. Um, but in there's this sort of struggle I've had, as someone that's wanted to kind of maintain a contemplative orientation kind of through a lay life. Like I made a choice when I was 20 to not go in the monastery when I was invited. And I was like, no, I want to do it outside of that. And
Uh-huh.
it hasn't been easy for me,
Yeah, yeah.
like it's been fun, but it's like it's been a bit wild and chaotic. And in there, like kind of in this trip for me, there is this like feeling of trying to bring together who I am on the surface, like the person that I am, like I grew up surfing and like a stoner and just kind of that's like part of my, and it took me a long time to even reclaim that. Like I had to let go of that. Like, oh, I'm gonna become spiritual now, and wear hippie clothes and be sober always and eat vegan raw. Like when I was in my 20s, and I'm wondering, like, as someone that's transitioning more into like a lay teacher, like living a lay life as a teacher, and someone who I imagine has worked with people that have chosen not to step into a monastic setting but
Mhm,
still are sincere in their commitment,
mhm.
like what you've seen that works for folks to kind of honor their sort of contemplative calling, but not have to like unnecessarily shed their identity, you know what I mean, where they can still hold those together. I don't know if that makes sense as a
Yeah, I want
question
to
or a
clarify.
framing. I can give
Yeah, I
more
want.
if it helps. So
Sure, sure. Well, I want to clarify what it means for it to work
yeah, that's
and what it means to shed your identity, which
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
those are
yeah. Yeah, and I
different.
don't mean in like an ego death sort of shedding identity. I mean like uh like I'm like most, I think of people entering a monastic setting and taking on a new name, taking
Yeah,
on robes, shaving their head. There's this sort of seems like a stripping away almost
yeah,
of maybe who they were before as
yeah.
part of the container.
Uh-huh.
But then for I think folks that stay in the lay life, they don't have that mark. But sometimes people seem to take it on themselves of like changing their sort of social identity to fit their spiritual identity a bit.
Yes.
And I've found that to be like frustrating for myself. Like I
Uh-huh.
like I almost had to let go of things I didn't want to let go of. No one made me, but it was just this sense. And
Yeah.
I've been like trying for a long time to like figure out more of a unified sort of stance of kind of being who I am as a person while still, trying to hold whatever that contemplative spirit is.
Yeah, yeah. So the contemplative traditions have evolved all of this technology or
Yeah.
all of these means to catalyze and amplify transformation
Mm-hmm.
and the deconstruction of identity and the opening of the heart.
Yeah.
So things like giving up forms of personal expression, like your hair and your clothes, for example.
Yeah.
It has other functions as well to remind you of your devotion and so
Yeah.
forth.
Like
But
seeing it in
they've
the mirror.
developed these. What's that?
Oh, seeing it in the mirror, like seeing your
Seeing in the
devotion in the
mirror. That's
mirror.
right. Yeah, I mean, most a typical Zen monastery, for example, would not even have a mirror.
Yeah.
You only pull out a mirror when it's time to shave,
Yeah.
so that you're interrupting the reference to self-image,
Uh-huh.
which if you choose that is an amazing and powerful thing.
Yeah.
So they have all these means that they accelerate transformation, but the core of it is still the meditation.
Yeah.
The core of it is still what happens when we really fire up awareness and look into the nature of mind. So for a layperson, if they're doing that, that itself is going to initiate the falling away that is ripe to happen.
Hmm.
It doesn't need to be contrived. It doesn't need to be artificial, and we don't have to like become Buddhists actually.
Yeah.
We don't have to like sign up for the spiritual club and all of a sudden decide we have to look the part. We may because we feel like that's a more genuine expression of our being
Mm-hmm.
to do those things, but what needs to fall away will fall away if the practice is done sincerely, if the essential practices are done sincerely.
Can you stay with that thread a bit, especially what you
Sure.
named earlier, that sort of dropping and when awareness is firing, and
Yeah.
seems like you're alluding to something almost, and I'm wondering if you could put some words there.
Yeah. Well, I think if it first begins, I can only speak of Buddhist
Yeah, yeah.
meditation. Yeah, with Buddhist meditation, first thing we begin to see is that we're not our thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and that many of them are just encultured accretions that are relatively true, if that. And so our own belief system about the world, ourselves, and others, it all comes into question. And simply by seeing it and looking at it squarely, a lot of it begins to fall away.
Mm.
Or there's a paring down process of what is truly authentic, and what is based on direct perception, and what is just conceptual or reactive or cultural.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing of stripping off the layers of conditioning, if it's taken far enough, or if we're lucky, we have some realization of awakening,
Mm.
of the space where there isn't identity.
Yeah.
A space where there isn't identity, but any identity can be flowed into as
Mm.
needed.
Yeah, like it could input as needed for the context almost.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the way of life, so sometimes there's two camps around this. A conservative point of view from Buddhism is you can't just meditate and not take on the other disciplines because it all comes together.
What would you kind of hold in those other disciplines?
Outward forms of renunciation
Yeah.
that really don't work in a lay life.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that really don't work. Though there's a middle ground where people do find their version of implementing that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always tweaked with austerity practices and
Yeah,
taken
yeah,
them on for periods just to see, where the
yeah,
clinging is.
yeah.
Yeah.
But traditional monasticism is an utter renunciation of autonomy to some degree and identity and all the ways in which we try to be a separate person from other people. It all gets
Yeah.
cut into.
Yeah.
So I think there's an organic way that what needs to fall away in a lay life falls away, and what needs to transform transforms just from the touching into the essence of what we are and getting more authentic and freeing ourselves from just what is not true.
Yeah.
And so the life shifts, and we start to make decisions or be faced with dilemmas that just organically arrange a life that works in accord with our devotion to the practice.
Oh.
Did that, I don't know if that was too
Yeah.
abstract or not.
I mean, I appreciated it. I'm an abstract human, so
All right.
I made meaning out of it. If you want to put some flesh to it, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've seen in students is lay people, they start practicing intensely, and then they realize that their relationships got to shift
Yeah.
because they need to be spending time with people who have similar value systems.
Mm. Like that forming of community, maybe not in a monastic sense, but sort of,
Yeah,
yeah.
that longing is there. I mean, that longing is
Yeah.
there, and in a way, it's necessary to have companions in contemplative practice. Very few
Yeah.
people can do it alone, and often when they do, they get a little bit skewed from my perspective.
Yeah, what kind of skewing? I mean, maybe it's individual, the skewing, but what do you see sort of the drift that happens when someone is pretty
Yeah,
private?
yeah. Well, this is a kind of a caution about lay practice in general. It can become really self-referential.
Mm-hmm.
My experience and my interpretation of the teachings, and before I know it, I'm decided I'm enlightened, and find me on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's not the same feedback loops that may be happening in a monastic
Checks and
setting where you're being
balances.
shown sort of where
Yeah,
self is firing strongly.
I love that phrase, self-firing strongly. Yeah. If you have that view about your partnerships or your close friendships or your family, it can serve that function
Yeah.
in a very powerful way, and that's something I think is really important,
Yeah,
is
like when you
new
can
relationships like that.
take on sort of a consensual commitment towards a transformational relationship where the relationship can sort of be the ground of the process in a way.
Yes, it's a lot of synergy when it works that way, but even if it's just you, you know, that you view your relationships and the reactivities that come up
Oh,
as your
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Because the essential difference between at least a Dharma practitioner and someone who's not a practitioner, I'm making quotes,
Mm-hmm.
is that you take responsibility for your own mind.
Yeah.
Whereas people who, in quotes, don't have a practice externalize the locus of control over their reactivity so much more than people who do practice.
Yeah.
It's like when we sit in meditation long enough, we understand how much responsibility we have for our mind,
Yeah.
how much our mind weaves the feeling tone of our day and our perceptual experience, and just how much shit we're making up, you know?
And that makes you smile a bit when you say
Yeah,
it.
it's just a humorous situation, the human, the human condition of how much suffering we make for ourselves. Of
Yeah,
course, there's suffering from systems and capitalism and having a human body and all that. Of course, there's that, but there's so much that just really comes from our own distorted and unskillful thinking,
yeah,
our beliefs.
yeah,
So, anyways, a community really helps one see that, and there are lay spiritual communities, of course.
yeah.
But the
How do you?
difference is you have to choose to keep showing up in those as a
Mm-hmm.
layperson. You're faced with the choice to engage with the mirrors of your own mind.
Yeah, like there's mirrors offering all around us always. It's just which ones we sort of choose to actually look into and see the reflection.
Will we continue to choose?
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's the part of us that wants to look directly into our hearts is not the only part of us.
yeah,
And that's, I think, the lay practitioner's deepest challenge is being outside of a monastic environment or some kind of retreat environment. You have to keep a beat on your agency and your desire and your passion for the work.
yeah,
You have less help,
yeah,
less peer pressure,
yeah,
which in some ways can make you a stronger practitioner.
yeah,
That's the flip side. Because if no one is making you get up and meditate, and if nobody is telling you to look at your own reactivity, but you still are keeping in touch with that desire and arranging your life so that you have a kind of crucible or a transformative environment, then that agency is wonderful because you're internalizing the aspiration for awakening
mm,
in a way which you can externalize it in other environments like a monastic environment.
yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for the speaking to the good
Sure.
side of the lay life. You know.
There's lots of good sides. There's lots of good sides. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
I don't believe that the monastic life is superior for awakening. And
yeah,
I think that would be a fairly controversial thing to bring up with some of the fundamentalists because the traditions themselves say it is superior, but I think both of them have their strengths and weaknesses, both environments for practice.
and what drew you in? I mean, for someone that kind of took 15 years of a commitment, what kind of drew you in and kept you there?
First thing that drew me in is I wanted to do retreat a lot,
Yeah,
and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that with a normal 9 to 5.
yeah. Well, and what about retreat for you? I mean, did you have some experiences before
I
retreat
did.
experiences, and
Yeah.
like that sounds like something caught you there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, after I did my first retreat, and especially after did my first Zen sesshin, I just knew like, oh my God, this is potent.
Yeah,
And after I went back to my life afterwards, I just felt like nothing else was as important.
yeah.
And especially in my 20s, I was just too distracted person and
Mm-hmm.
too much going on to make a life where I would do a lot of retreat.
Yeah.
So I went into the environment first of all, there are other reasons, but primarily because I wanted to do the Zen session, the retreat every month. Like
Yeah,
that was like, okay,
and ZCO seems to have a pretty heavy schedule, like
yeah.
a little stronger than some other communities I've seen. Not the
I don't
strongest,
I
but
don't know, but generally there's a session every month, and
yeah.
there was a period of years where we did that plus other meditation retreats every month. So,
Jeez, that's a
and that's
lot of.
what I wanted. I just wanted to be in that situation and go deeper and deeper with that, and that was my priority. So,
And what does retreat afford? You know, why was that like what, you know, after committing and kind of maybe seeing some of the fruition of spending time there, like what,
what does retreat afford?
yeah, what, you know, what did it,
Well, first of all, just there really is some kind of alchemy when you commit to an intensive amount of sitting meditation
yeah.
that can't be replicated otherwise. I use the metaphor of heat for
Hmm.
awareness, but actually, literally, awareness has an energetic heat, and the more you're stoking that, the stronger it gets. And
Hmm.
so that alone, just sitting 8, 12 more hours a day without the ability to say, nah, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Just the giving up the choice around that,
Yeah.
and just being in that situation over and over, that's just really potent.
Yeah.
And then if you have, I had teachers that I really resonated with. There was a lot of synergy there. So
Mm-hmm.
that plus the amount of sitting is just so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, I find it myself, and I haven't seen this with everyone. I've talked to people, and I find a lot of retreats, not all of them sort of have like an arc to them almost. Like there's like an arc that's unfolding, and it's soft, it's not loud, but like something, it almost like something's being worked through, and it seems a little different per retreat.
Yeah.
And I don't know for you if that's something that resonates or.
Yeah. Yeah. It does resonate. And I would say there's like two arcs for me that I've experienced. One is my karmic work or the work on my conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
my reactivity, in Buddhist terms, my greed, anger, and my ignorance, and how that shows up in my own mind stream. That's a thread that you pick up over and over again when you go into retreat because you sit down just like right in the mess of yourself, no
Mm-hmm.
escape.
Yeah.
We're always living in the environment of our own mind, but that becomes more and more clear that that's the primary environment we dwell in is our own
Yeah.
mind. So yeah, that work continues, and there seems to be themes. And I saw in myself that in a way, the same stuff I'd work on, and like a spiral, would get deeper and deeper.
Hmm.
But the other arc is the work on like essence work, or the work on letting go of being somebody altogether and getting down to the nakedness of awareness, and that has an arc too.
Oh yeah.
That's a work that has a thread. That when we learn to rest at that level of release, when you go back into retreat, there's some sense in which once you know that territory, you can begin to relax into it easier and easier and continue where you left off, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying and kind of want to hang out with this a bit more around essence and relaxing. And I know it's enters a space where words can be hard to kind of capture, but part of this kind of project I'm doing is my dad. We had a pretty rocky relationship. He left me when I was a kiddo, trying to work it out. Trying to find what it means to be uh, dad and son with that karmic history.
Mhm.
But he was like an avid surfer, but we never went out because like I think our times didn't overlap. But he was really into barrel riding, which is like this, when you kind of drop in and you're in the tube of the barrel and it's kind of over you,
Uh-huh.
and then you kind of find your way out. And people that surf, even kind of your, alcoholic, just drinking beer all day long kind of surfer will like talk about that as being like touching God almost, or like the vortex or emptiness. Or I've even seen documentaries where they try to like compare it to a spiritual state.
Uh-huh.
And I'm kind of curious for you, for a surfer, right? They find that in the barrel. There's this one period and it lasts about a second and a half, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you're speaking to this way of accessing that sort of quality of experience and learning it and kind of how to maybe reside there. And I was wondering if you could kind of touch on that a bit of
Yeah.
the practice of what it is to sort of relax into essence, to use the words you were using there, and
Yeah. Hmm.
what it's like maybe when you settle a bit.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, the first thing I just feel compelled to say is that there are many different spiritual experiences.
totally. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's always I'm more interested in what do you mean by God? Like, tell me what that is for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you mean by emptiness? What is that for you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in a way that I'm curious and I want to invite all the facets of that jewel,
Yeah.
is it's not all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some important distinction to be made between states of being and while I call it essence, I mean there's no essence, but why I call it essence is that it's what's there when everything else is let go of.
Mm.
It's not something that's created, it's what is revealed when there's no attachment.
Yeah.
It's what's revealed when we like utterly let things be in their own space and we don't relate to them as me.
Mm.
You know, that's non-attachment in its fruition when we do deep meditation.
Yeah.
And you know, the feeling tone of that is spacious. The feeling tone of that is intimate.
Yeah.
And the feeling tone of that, I mean, in that there's no stress whatsoever when we
Mm.
fully let go.
Yeah.
We do see that stress is not inherent in human being. That
Mm.
it is the product of how we relate to ourselves and our environment.
Yeah.
So it's a profound release, and the texture is pleasant and peaceful, but that's just the beginning, you know, because that when we let go of who we think we are to that degree and that space is opened up, there's room for everything, for taking every shape. So that essence is every emotion, and that essence is the body, and that essence is feeling stressed, you know. It's not something, some peaceful bubble apart from the rest of life.
Mm-hmm. Oh wait, sorry, Jogan.
No
I
problem.
forgot to silence my phone.
That's all right. You can, good thing you can edit that out.
Yeah, yeah. Or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not. I'm kind of lazy. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm
yeah.
kind of going off here because it's a very nuanced thing. In Zen teaching, the experience of liberation, you know, there are systems that delineate it. Like you can look at it these five ways or these ways. There's
Mm-hmm.
the four positions or the five ranks, or because awakening or essence is not experienced in just one way, which is
Yeah,
what's so beautiful about it. You know,
yeah,
it's beautiful that you can experience it on a surfboard,
yeah,
and that experience can go deeper and deeper
yeah.
and be seen from different angles.
I was drawn when you were talking about that sort of absence of stress, or the seeing of uh, maybe not even the need for stress. Um, I don't know if those were
Yeah,
but then getting off the cushion or out of the retreat, and stress arises, and
absolutely.
like how that impacts the way you relate to stress or meet stress or constriction or worry or anxiety or
Yeah.
self-doubt, all those things that seem to kind of like to arise in the human experience. I'm wondering kind of how that kind of deeper essence experience impacts how you meet kind of all these things when they do show up.
Yeah. I think whether it's in like a big shift or a little shift, one thing that happens, or I'll say has happened for me, is it takes more external challenge,
Mm,
more has to be on my plate, or more has to be coming at me, or conditions have to be more difficult for me to hit the stress point.
mm,
So my threshold for just being okay with what is a lot bigger than it was
yeah,
before. And so I'm less easily knocked out of equilibrium.
yeah,
But you have a human body with a nervous system that feels intimately and is impacted by people and things. So there's a lot of hairs to be split. In a way, the question is, how free can we navigate a modern life without any stress whatsoever? Can we just flow through it in a kind of awakened, free state? And I think my answer is, in theory, yes,
yeah,
because you see that stress is entirely a function of the mind, uh, in opposition to circumstance, in its clinging mode.
mm,
But in reality, the person who could really do that in a modern life probably doesn't exist.
yeah.
You might be able to do it in a cave or in a monastery or in a protected environment up on the teaching seat. But with a family and three kids and a job and like, gunshots ringing out down the street, I don't know.
Mm,
So I think the idea is not to be free from stress, but to be abiding in what stress arises in. We are, again, at least for Zen practitioners, we're not aiming for a state of peace. We're aiming for a mode of being where there's peace with whatever arises.
mm,
To embrace life in a way that we feel what comes up with both intimacy. We're willing to feel 100%. In a way, that's like the biggest challenge is we don't want to experience what we experience. Part of us says, nope, don't want to feel that pain. Nope, don't want to feel that anxiety. Don't want to feel this discomfort. And that's the stress.
Yeah. The
The,
turning away.
the turning away in the way that splits our being, the way
Mm-hmm.
that puts us in a dualistic situation.
Yeah. I
And that
sometimes call it divided experience, like when
and
our
it's a
experience is
divided
divided.
experience, yeah. And then our own mind and body are divided, and then our own
Yeah.
nervous system becomes dysregulated. So that is something we can correct and become free of. We can more and more be fully willing to experience what we experience without splitting off or dissociating.
And in a way, like, I want to be careful in how I name this. But there seems like such a heightened level of anxiety and stress right now, kind of in our
Totally.
culture in the world. Like it's always there, and it feels like it was already at the higher dial, and somehow they found a few more notches to raise it
Yeah,
up, whoever they are, you know.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
um, and it seems like there's sort of a lot of opportunity to meet stress right now.
yeah.
And I'm wondering if, you, like, because maybe people's plates are fuller right now with everything that's happening, and if you could kind of speak to uh, how to skillfully meet it when it does feel like too much or it feels like a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing that comes up for me is to respect our coping strategies,
Mm-hmm.
respect them as coming from a place of kindness in us, and at the very least coming from survival strategy. You know that from
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just respect those, and that sometimes that's the best thing we can do, and that we should do it. So to never um, marginalize those or demonize those or make
Mm.
that a thing that we should be ashamed of.
Yeah.
But so practice is an invitation to live in a courageous way, to relate to experience courageously, but also the way that is most intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time that we do split off from experience or decide, no, I'm not going to feel this, or every time that we let ourselves check out because things are difficult, we deepen that groove.
Mm.
And the consequences of dissociating or checking out are not so good cumulatively. On the other hand, the consequences, if it's not a traumatic level of intensity, of feeling what we feel and staying inhabiting our bodies and our experience, that's only beneficial.
Mm.
And especially if we have some sense of the spaciousness of awareness from a meditation practice, we can hold that. We
Yeah.
can be with that grief, we can be with that fear, we can be with that anxiety, and being with it is always better than reacting to it.
It seems though a lot of times, right, when there's a flare or constriction, whatever the right word is, or different words, to capture different experiences,
Yeah.
there's a sort of, at least in myself, and I see in others, this almost sort of bracing, like like when you say it's always better, that's not the feeling initially. Like, right, when the intensity is there, there's such a loud voice or feeling to turn away or to do something to change it.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a threshold a lot of times that you almost have to get through to kind of settle into the experience.
Yeah.
And I'm just, you know how do what helps folks kind of turn towards experience, and
Yeah.
you speak of courageousness, and I'm like, what allows us to sort of tap the courageous heart, or
Yeah.
wherever you want to go with that,
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying, speaking about the threshold, because I think the way it works is we do recoil, but then if we have the mind of practice, we relax back into what we recoiled from.
Yeah.
So that rhythm is there often,
Yeah.
right? That's just the way it goes for most of the time. And that's not a bad thing, of course. We see that we're doing that we're grasping, we're clinging, we're shrinking, and then we open back into the experience if we have that intention. But what lets folks do that is, I think, we have to want to be somebody who doesn't avoid life. We have to be
Mm.
somebody who wants to be with the energies of existence in all their intensity. We have to see the consequences of living a life around avoiding discomfort. You got to
Yeah.
see what that does to us,
Yeah.
you know. And to phrase it positively, when we taste the freedom of fielding discomfort in a space of mindfulness and awareness, it becomes more and more compelling. Like that's it's a ordinary miracle,
Yeah.
to do that. I remember when I first would come out of retreat and into the city, there was this profound feeling of just a profound feeling of freedom of being in let's say I'm driving, and when I was younger driving, I would just get so tense
Mm.
and be so much stress, and I would get angry at people and I would feel unsafe and all that stuff. And coming out of that from the retreat space or from a morning sitting and feeling how I could be in that very same environment and not be triggered like that is so juicy. It's so
Mm.
compelling.
Yeah.
It's so for me, tasting that potential inspires me to more and more want to live that way and to keep returning to this different way of relating to experience.
Yeah.
The problem is not this experience most of the time. The problem is the part of me that's unwilling to be present with it.
Yeah. And like one thing I'm seeing just in the world and folks I work with and friends is with COVID and with, a lot that's happening is maybe they've had some ability to relax around the constriction. But right now it's like, wait, is this one I can relax around, or do I need to hold on to this one? Maybe this one's real, whatever the version of the constriction is, that there seems to be uh, an enticement to stay with it a little longer.
Hmm.
And I don't know if this is something
Sure, sure.
for you.
Well, I mean, I want to make a distinction between feeling passionate and charged around an issue is not something I'm saying to let go of.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about
Yeah.
more anxiety and
Yeah, more
worry and
anxiety. Yeah,
fear.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's our belief system, right? That's our defense mechanism. I get anxious and I get some adrenaline, and then I can flee the situation or defend myself.
yeah.
So that's like deep reptilian brain kind of stuff. And um, one of the benefits of practicing over a long time is you just think about these things a lot, and you think about the consequence of actions, and you internalize a different view.
Mm-hmm.
So part of what helps me in the moment is not necessarily my instincts around the experience, but it's a view that I've cultivated
Mm-hmm.
from listening to teachers over the years and from reading the teachings and from my own experience altogether. I've just internalized like, oh, it's actually more skillful and more loving and more beneficial to not get caught up in this,
Mm.
not to pretend I'm not feeling it, not to spiritually bypass. No, no, no.
Yeah.
It's not what I'm saying, but to inhabit this anxiety, this stress with presence.
That seems
And
like such a delicate line there to be it and to not verify it or sort of validate it.
it is. I agree.
Yeah.
We have to learn the difference between being willing to feel and experience something with space and taking it as ultimately real and worthy of avoiding.
Yeah.
It is a delicate line.
Yeah. Well, thanks for describing it a bit.
Sure, sure, yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, in no way do I want to diminish what people are feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just I guess what I want to say is that we metabolize the difficulties of our lives when we practice them.
Mm-hmm.
We use the stuff of our anxiety and our fear and our concern to wake up and become deeper and more rich and loving humans when we inhabit it with presence
Mm.
rather than deepening the reactive habits in us.
Yeah. That seems so, I really appreciate that. Like the stuff of our life is what's allowing the transformation. And I think so much we kind of want the stuff to go away.
No. No, no difficulties, no liberation, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For a long time I experienced full-blown panic attacks, like palms dripping, sweat, heart
Oh,
pounding when I would
yeah. I'm
meditate.
sorry, man. That's a whole other level, right? Like,
It's well, it's and I think I would hit like a layer of some kind of trauma.
mm-hmm,
Maybe it was ancestral trauma, maybe it was childhood in my meditation practice, and I was able to have the support to sit through that,
mm,
to know what it's like to hold space for terror even. And so I don't wish that on people, but I sometimes tell my students, they say, oh, anxiety is coming up in their practice when they sit. And I'm like, great, perfect. I wish you fully manageable panic attacks in the space of your sitting meditation.
yeah,
And I wish that you take that into the next difficult interaction you have with somebody, and the next time you get sick, because spiritual practice is not about feeling good. It's about holding our life in a deep perspective, in a deep context.
mm,
And it won't happen. We'll become hothouse flowers if our practice and our challenges don't come together.
yeah.
And anyways, it'll happen anyway.
Yeah, the
You don't have to
challenge will
be willing
always
to
meet
look
you,
for it.
right?
The challenge will always be there, but we don't all meet challenges the same way.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really curious to me is why some people become, profoundly rich and durable and heartfelt people from going through difficulties, and other people just shrink and collapse,
Mm.
like the mysteries of life. And of course, there's a lot in between those two, but why does that happen?
Yeah, what sort of allows for the resiliency of the heart to emerge through difficulty and what kind of,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. People come out the other side of difficult times in their life, and they're deepened and they're more open, and some people come out and they're more traumatized. And what is that mystery?
yeah. You got any speculation?
I don't,
Just
but I
a
do feel
curious
like
interest.
if we have a practice, if we have a contemplative practice, we're more likely to fall on the
Mm.
side of becoming matured and ripened and more compassionate from our difficulties than resentful.
Yeah,
I think it increases the possibility that that will happen.
yeah,
Guaranteed.
yeah. Cool. Um, earlier you mentioned the heart, sort of in the dropping into the heart, or I don't remember your exact words, but I was wondering if we could just hang out with the heart for a little bit.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know what the I don't have a good question there, just a desire to be with the heart,
Yeah.
So if you could speak to heart or, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. When I drop into the heart like that, I don't really want to speak.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
I feel more and more that the heart is its own mode of intelligence.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
its own living, energetic organism. And this is not new, the eye of the heart.
mm-hmm.
That phrase has been around for so long, so we know this.
Yeah, I've been reconnecting to some Christian roots in the last year or so, and the sort of dropping the mind into the heart. And there's so much focus on the heart in that tradition.
Yeah,
I feel sometimes in Zen, and I know this is simplifying, but like the hara or the gut is like there's so much in the gut,
yep,
and and
yeah,
these sort of zones that we maybe have where we can live from,
yeah.
and like for you, maybe the journey for you to kind of your heart, and what it's been like to learn to attempt to reside there, come from there. I heard you once say that you wrote something above your door, right? Like I don't remember the phrase, but it was like, was it loving, or were you coming from love, or
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Something about choosing love.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to be loving when people are nice to you and you find them attractive and everything's going well. It's not so easy to abide there when things aren't going well and people aren't attractive to you and so forth. it's not easy when you're outside of it, but when we're in the heart, when I'm in the heart, that's where I want to be, and that's how I want to experience the world. And I think being in the heart doesn't mean that you just experience positive things.
Yeah.
I think that's a a one-sided version of understanding of love, and opening to a bigger love is that this means you're going to feel more loving feelings, but no, it means you're going to feel a lot more things. You're going to feel more grief and more sadness, and um, hopefully you have space to hold that heart in. That's why in Buddhism we emphasize wisdom and compassion.
Hmm.
One without the other is a lopsided practice.
You described when you spoke of it there almost like a place, like when you're in the heart. And
For
I'm
me,
wondering
yeah,
how you like when I'm in a place I can kind of, oh, I'm here. Like what are
yeah.
the sort of signs or the signifiers to let you know like, oh, I'm in the heart versus maybe
For
in the
me,
head
yeah,
or
yeah.
somewhere else.
It's very much somatically inhabited. I am my just like you talked about the belly and Zen inhabiting the Tanden, right?
Yeah.
That area of the body. For me, its presence is filling out the chest, the heart center.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know at a time in my practice when I was going through emotional difficulty, I noticed I would disinhabit the heart.
Hmm.
The mind would be clear, I would be present, there would be spaciousness, but it's like awareness had slipped away from the heart center.
Hmm.
And I would notice I needed to re-inhabit the heart, and what that meant is feeling things I didn't want to feel, and being with a broken heart, essentially.
Oh.
So that's what it means to inhabit the heart. It means that you have to inhabit a broken heart. Because if it's not broken, it's not the heart.
Yeah.
This world you can't be heart centered and it not have a crack in it,
Not hurt a bit.
not hurt a bit or hurt a lot at
Yeah.
times. So it's very physical for me, and I have taken up practices of working with the energy of the heart, literally, or it is subtle body, but it's somatic.
Mm-hmm. Subtle somatic.
Subtle somatic, yeah, I like that phrase. And I encourage my students to do that. And
What are the practices for you that you've kind of drawn on for working with the heart?
yeah, I've done different energy yogas,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd say the essential things that they all come down to is breathing into the heart and re-inhabiting,
Mm.
re-inhabiting. I think it is not such a strong habit for me these days to be up in my head. And I think that's the number one thing that gets us out of the heart is just being so rationally centered.
Mm. Yeah. If
And
the head is rational, kind of what's the heart's mode?
I guess it's the heart's mode. I don't want to reduce it to just feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not just merely emotional. I don't know what it is. I don't know what words I would put to that. I don't know what words I would put to that. I think there's a regard for life. One is
Mm.
seeing from a regard from life when we're stationed in the heart.
Mm. That seems so essential right now.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like a deep respect for the dignity and the beauty of being
Yeah.
that can be rationalized, but it's not felt there. You know?
Yeah. The word that comes up as you talk is participatory.
Yeah,
There's some participatory quality that you're together with whatever, all things or certain things or
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. In Dzogchen, the heart is the mostly symbolic, but somewhat an energetic truth is the abiding place of the heart.
Mm.
So the awakened mind is not some cool detached wisdom. It's pervaded with the quality of heart, whatever
Mm.
that is.
Yeah.
That communion of being,
Yeah.
participatory.
Yeah. Well, Yeah. I wanted to maybe go down a little bit of a Dzogchen rabbit, but I don't
Sure.
think we have enough time for that,
I have a
probably.
little bit more time if you want to.
Yeah, like when did Dzogchen come in the mix for you? It seems like you've been with it for a while. I know I took a like a day long where you brought some Dzogchen into a Zen context and
Yeah,
mixed it, I think, with some other things too. A little
yeah,
cocktail that you made, it seemed.
yeah. In my early 20s, those were some of the first Dharma books I found,
Yeah, yeah.
Dzogchen books. So I thought that was what Buddhism was. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so in a way, I feel really lucky that. No, I read some of the more orthodox Buddhist things, and I was too young. I was, 17 or 18, and I was like, I'm this. This just feels like it's criticizing me. Like I'm this kind of sinful, foolish being. But Dzogchen had an openness to it that I loved, and especially even before I went into the monastery, I was reading a book called Flight of the Garuda, which is a classic text in the Nyingma tradition of Dzogchen and the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And I was reading that, as I was transitioning into this Zen monastery. And so it profoundly influenced my view of what practice was. It wasn't until a number of years later that I actually received Dzogchen instruction from
Mm,
people like Alan Wallace and Tenzin Wangyal. And then I met Keith Dowman in 2008 or 2009, I believe,
okay.
somewhere around then.
Yeah.
And he was coming to Portland, and I was invited to a seminar with him, and I clicked with him right away. There was just some real affinity. And essentially, it helped me understand Zen more,
Mm.
and some of the things that were in the teachings of Zen that I never quite got. There's more technology in Dzogchen because it has a tantric, it came up, it arose in a tantric context. So there's more working with visualization and prana and things like that.
Yeah, it seems the subtle body's held a bit more with it.
What's that?
The subtle body is held a bit more with
There's
it.
more attention to the subtle body, and there's some creative, skillful means
Yeah.
that work with freeing us from some of our fixed beliefs and dualisms.
Oh.
So yeah, I love the Dzogchen tradition. I've sometimes told people it's like Zen but more fun, uh, which is it's not quite true, but there's something about there's a more expressiveness that's invited in the Dzogchen tradition. There's a practice called Ruzhen, which has been really impactful for me, where you give expression to all the different realms of suffering.
Mm.
In Buddhism, there's the six realms, which are these different modes of being, and you give full expression to them with your body, mind, and speech.
Is this a movement practice or is this on the
The movement
cushion?
practice, it's done in different ways. There's
Yeah.
ways that you do it with visualization, and there's ways that you do it full on, like almost theatrically.
Yeah.
And those practices really changed my life and led to some other practices that were similar.
So there's this sort of fully inhabiting or embodying, but then expressing, like giving life to these sort of these realms.
The idea is that within the context of spaciousness,
Uh-huh.
from abiding in spaciousness, you then move full on into extremes of being, whether positive or negative, whether hellish or heavenly. You move into extremes of being, but they're infused with that spaciousness. So you know them as empty, you know them as energy, you know them as a play of light.
Mm-hmm.
And what's different than a normal catharsis is that you're not just being full on 100% emotional and playing out these extremes, but it's infused with essence,
Mm.
with experience of emptiness. And so Keith Dowman would say you dance the six realms. You dance the spaciousness of the hell realms, or the spaciousness of the hungry ghosts, or the spaciousness of animals, and so forth. And as I'm saying this, I realize it connects back to why I have this value of fully inhabiting experience rather than retracting from it, because that's what this practice is of Ruzhen.
Mm.
Is training to do that.
And it seems kind of in this and other things we've touched on, this ability to tap into or connect to essence seems to really support one's capacity to be with experience and maybe some of the more difficult experiences.
Absolutely.
What would you say to someone that kind of doesn't experientially know that, that doesn't have a taste? Like what
Well, it
supports?
depends on who it was, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you could be a
Yeah.
bit broad, assuming
Yeah.
there's a wideness of potential listening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason that people do intensive practice.
Yeah,
There's real shifts in being don't come with just good ideas
yeah.
in general. There's got to be some work around it. There's got to be some ritual or some contemplative technology, something that invites us into essentially what is just a different relationship with experience. Sometimes people think of Zen or Buddhism or other contemplative traditions of making a new state of mind or discovering something. Partially true, but from where I'm at, it's moving into a different relationship with the very same stuff.
Mm, yeah.
A relationship that is not in opposition, a relationship of intimacy with all the same textures of life, but your orientation is different,
Mm,
and that's everything.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jogan, for hanging out for an
You're
hour. I do
welcome. Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Appreciate you. Excited to see
Likewise.
what you do in the coming years with maybe a little more freedom on your hands to kind of
Yeah.
choose your schedule.
Can I plug my
Oh, plug all the things you want to plug. You
yeah,
can plug
yeah,
all
yeah.
you want.
Yeah. So, I'm a Zen teacher and I lead retreats and I'm a teacher within Zen Community of Oregon. But I also do one-on-one facilitation work with, I bring parts work,
Mm-hmm.
voice dialogue and process work together with awareness work. And I
Mm-hmm.
do one-on-one facilitations. And a lot of what I talked about today, I help people do,
Yeah.
fully inhabiting the spectrum of themselves with presence
Yeah.
and opening up to what they've excluded and who they are.
Yeah. That's sort of
Um,
reclaiming aspects of experience that maybe have been broken off for a while.
Totally, shadow work, all of
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So if you're interested in doing that kind of work with me, my website is solisluna.org,
Yeah.
Solisluna.
Yeah, and whenever I put this up, I'll link that kind of on
Very
it.
cool.
I,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't yet decided how the form of this will go, but
Oh, okay.
I imagine it'll be on YouTube and on a podcast thing. So,
Cool. Cool.
yeah,
Yeah. So if people are
yeah,
interested, they can reach out.
yeah. Good luck. I hope I hope the Dharma brings financial support so you can continue living. And
We'll
the
see.
two can work together.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Good
Thank
luck
you.
with your project.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. We'll see. See if it turns into anything. I take on things and sometimes they don't become something. So
Yeah. I hope you follow it through. It sounds really cool.
yeah, thank you, Jogan. I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye bye.